Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fearless Ones podcast, where we build fearless people who build fearless communities that builds a fearless generation. I'm Matt Ham, and the distinguished gentleman on the other side of the screen is Kevin Adams. What's up, buddy?
Cabbage and pork chops, man. That's how distinguished I am. I love me some cabbage and pork chops.
Oh, man, I think that sounds good right now, actually, man.
It does, man, especially if you cook the cabbage, fry it lightly in bacon grease.
Amen.
Excellent.
Bacon grease makes everything so much better.
It does.
Oh, man, that is good. Well, maybe
it is the most redeemed thing there is a pig, man. It's the highest redemption.
I love it. We'll throw a little bacon grease on the show today, make it extra good for everybody tuning in. We normally go live on Rumble and YouTube and Facebook currently on Fridays, but we're live on Tuesday today. Of course, it'll publish to the podcast all the same. But really appreciate everybody who joins us and tunes in. And man, Kevin, there's been a lot of energy just circling around the show. In my perspective, some people have stopped us and just said, "Man, I'm really listening, and I love what you guys are saying. I'm not seeing this anywhere else, and it's just it's good." And so we feel like there's a lot of momentum, a lot of exciting stuff coming down the pipes for both of our organizations, our Fearless Trading Company, which is our for-profit entity, as well as the Fearless Life Center, which is our nonprofit initiative. So exciting times, man.
Yeah, well, it's so grassroots, and it's a small beginning, and we're thankful that God continues to confirm direction and growth for us, and so we're not in a rush, but we're always want to follow at His pace, and He's hungry for people, and so we're not holding anything back, but it's nice to hear that people are listening, and hopefully more and more as time goes by will, and that they will hear something that they haven't heard before. I mean, that's the individual uniqueness that are we.
Yes.
So I don't want to say anything that's been said 1,000 times. So anyway,
no regurgitated peas, right?
No, you don't need to. Hey, the other thing that's really neat is, and it's hard to see right this minute it depends on your posture and your position, but we're getting ready to do a lot more posting and all that, but it's going to be in a better place. It's going to be on Truth Social, and that thing's going to grow, and there's going to be a lot of neat things happen as all these other things are imploding.
Yeah.
So please, if you haven't got on Truth, and we're just we're just getting started. We're not in a rush, but definitely check us out there, and let's gather up over there a little bit. So,
well, just to let our folks know who are on Truth Social or who are getting on is you can connect with us, Fearless Ones or Fearless Trading Co. Those are both our handles that we're using. We've just started posting over there, starting to get some feedback too, man. So that's good.
Good.
We're starting to get a little bit of traction. We're trying to be more consistent. But like you said, that's an emerging place where we feel like our voice will be welcomed and not censored as it has been in some other arenas and environments. And so we're gonna kind of continue to press forward in that endeavor. And I think that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, we're doing it today. Got some things Friday that other work related things, but so thanks. And today's title is "Are You a Disciple Maker?" And we had a title. I guess I don't know. I can't keep up with them, but it's probably been 6-8 weeks ago. Are you are the resources or the provision that God has for you, is that making disciples for Him? So this is kind of in that camp. But anyway, something.
Well, I think again, the foundational piece for the work we do is that's who we are. It's what we call ourselves, right? We've been talking about this, that we are disciple makers, and that comes from a direct, command, not a suggestion from Jesus.
Right.
Go into the nations, right, and make disciples of all, or go into the world, make disciples of all
Right.
nations. And
Right.
so we have a biblical precedent and declaration that this is what we're supposed to be doing. But when you talk about discipleship, it's that word that gets tossed around Christendom, and it's just like, well, what is that really? And people equate it to theological understanding, or quoting Bible verses, or being able to find a verse in the Bible, to mean all these kinds of things. And so today, I think it's gonna be good, man, to talk about what discipleship is
Yeah.
from our perspective, what it means to be a disciple, and then what it means to make disciples. And that is ultimately what we believe is going to change the generation, and that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. Right. Well, if you are a disciple maker, then you must be a disciple. So you can't separate those two things. And I had sent you a text the other day, and you were saying, I'm at a different place, and kind of, it was good. It was really mature, and I was just really glad to hear your heart. And I said, man, you are a disciple maker. And that's I think that's where we're coming from, and we'll talk more about not that text, but just the idea and where we stand, and that is who we are. So what we're doing is inviting you, the listener, and our community, and anyone who's listening, anyone, to ask that question of yourself, and then come along and be a disciple maker, not just a disciple, but a disciple maker.
Yeah.
You have a responsibility if you're a disciple. So what it does is the term takes it off of just a student to a student who becomes a teacher, who becomes one that can help forward the kingdom, not just sit back and learn what it's about. So that's why the term is powerful, and why I'm sure Jesus said it
Right.
in a different way, but he did say it. So deciding what that looks like is kind of what the show is about today.
Yeah. So what would you say are some fundamental aspects of a disciple of Jesus? So if the prerequisite to being a disciple maker is being a disciple, what would you say are kind of the fundamental aspects of being a disciple of Jesus?
Well, it's, there's so many references to this. We just have to narrow it down. But to me, I look at it this way. I've been, remember we used to say, are you saved? I'm saved, and let's get them saved.
Yeah.
Well, in the Bible, it does say seek and save the lost. Not that we're saving them, but that's part of the gospel commission. But the gospel of the kingdom is a bigger thing than the gospel of salvation, and they are two different things. One is nested within the other. So we're talking about the gospel of the kingdom, right? And that is to go and make disciples. It's a deeper thing. It's about relationship. So the simple thing is going back for me. I've been saved for quite a while, but that's a different thing than walking with God. So the way I laid it out, or the way God kind of helped me understand this several years back, is it's a journey, right? And that is going from being a saved servant to a sanctified son. And so it's about sonship, or being a child of God, and what that actually looks like. And the journey, Jesus saved you, and if you accept that, then you're his. But that does not necessarily make you a disciple. It may eventually, hopefully you keep growing, but just being saved doesn't. You may miss the mark, and you may miss the purpose from which God put you here. So in order to understand who you are, you have to learn how to be led by the Spirit, and that's where we're going to go. Is Romans 8, and those who are led by the Spirit, these are the sons of God. And it means, it's a masculine term, but it means children of God, sons and daughters, right? So getting from being this mentality of Jesus saved me to I'm praying to my Father through the Son, and I'm listening back and following him. That's what a disciple is. His sheep know his voice. So it's one who listens and follows. Simplest way I can describe it.
Yeah. So when you see a lot of the and again, part of what we do is speak to the realities of culture and institutions and traditions and routines and kind of that subtle indoctrination that has happened in culture, where just like the Pharisees of the day, right? That God sent his son, his Messiah, his savior, and he was right in front of them and they missed him, right? Because they were looking for something else. And so in this dynamic of kind of Western Christianity, there are a lot of people who are, they know Jesus, they believe in Jesus, they go to church or whatever, but the gap, if you will, is this idea of being filled with the Spirit, led by the Spirit, right? And becoming the son or daughter that you have been created to be. And that process can only happen through being discipled, right? Being taught, being educated, being trained, which is exactly what Jesus did to his followers, is exactly what Paul did to Timothy, et cetera, et cetera. Is that how you would contextualize that transition that takes place?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a student teacher component to it, a father-son component to it, if you will, or mother-daughter, however you want to look at it. But it's learning to sit at Jesus' feet and listen through Jesus. Listen to this part, through Jesus to the Father. Okay. Now, if you go back to Mary and Martha's story in Luke, you see Mary sitting at Jesus' feet, and you see Martha hanging out in the background, but she's getting frustrated. She's a traditional Jewish girl, lady, being hospitable and probably making food and all that. And her sister isn't helping her. And she's frustrated about that. And Jesus doesn't condemn Martha, but he says, why are you so worried? And what are you worried about? And then he points at Mary and says, Mary has the better thing and it won't depart from her. That's a very powerful image. So Jesus is saying, he's not saying Martha, which I would equate to a saved servant, and Mary to a sanctified son or daughter, meaning she is resting. There's intimacy there. She's listening. Most important thing we can do is learn to listen. So, when we look at Jesus as our model, not just our Savior, our model of sonship, what do we see? Well, we see him. I'll read a verse here. I got a couple of them pulled up. There's more than these, but there's a couple. Let's see. This is John 5:19, somewhere right in there. It says, so Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, the Son does likewise. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all that he himself is doing. And it goes on. Another one, here's another one, and we can talk about this. I'll go ahead and read them real quick. This is John 12:49-50. For I have not spoken of my own authority, but the Father who sent me as himself given me a commandment, what to say and what to speak. And I know that his commandment is eternal life. What I say, therefore, I say as the Father has told me. So, and there's other verses, but those two right there, or those two or three, give us the idea that Jesus is modeling something for us. So we tend to set him aside and say, well, he's Jesus, and that's not our job. And it's exactly our job. So Jesus saving mankind is not our job. That's the perfect lamb identity. We don't do that. We don't emulate it. He did it so we can be like him, but like him as a person. So what he's modeling for us as a human being is sonship, which is going back to the Romans 8 verse. Those who are led by the sons of God, those who are led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. And it goes on, and it's such a beautiful passage, one of my favorite passages.
Yeah.
So we've got to learn to live from the Spirit of God, from heaven, I like to call it, into the earth as a vessel. That's what Jesus was modeling.
Yeah.
So in order for us to be like him, we need to literally do what he did, be like him, and not push him aside like he's magic or flying around in golden underwear and doing miracles. He did miracles, but he told us to do them. So let go of miracles for a minute. Just think about the person. Everything he did by faith, not magic. So we can't separate ourselves in that capacity. We need to follow his example. It doesn't mean we'll achieve it, but it does mean that that's the goal. And that's what becoming a disciple, not just of Christ, but a follower, an intimate son or daughter of the living God, of Father, our Father. Because he said our Father, he didn't say my Father, and he didn't say your Father. That puts us in family together as people, right?
Yes.
He's the son, we are a son or a daughter.
Well, one of the things that we've talked about before on the show is the idea of being in a family business, right? That, we can relate to that because we know people who have family businesses. Oh, my dad started this and now I'm taking it up and I'm in a family business. And you made the kind of comparison that as believers, we are adopted into God's family and we better be about his business, right?
That's right.
And not to get off too far off course here, but from a biblical standpoint, when you look at God made a covenant with his people, which was Israel, right? Yah Israel. I'm going to make a nation out of you and a people to call my own. And, Jesus, when he came, he was opening up that family, that covenant family belonging to everyone who would believe by faith. And so we are then grafted into this idea of Israel, like we are God's people. We are in the family. And I know that that's only a thought that I've probably, really wrestled with and grasped because, they're Jews, they're Hebrews. We are Israel. We are, God's family.
It's spiritual. We're spiritual Jews, if you want to call us that.
Yes.
It's not about blood or physicality.
Yeah.
We are in the line of Christ, adopted, grafted. And you can do that with a branch on a tree, which is amazing, right? You can take a branch from one kind of tree, cut it, graft it into another. That's exactly but absolutely. All that's right.
I just think I never had actually paused long enough to consider the fact that, you know what I mean? Like the Lord has adopted us into his family. And when you realize that you're a part of something greater than yourself, that you're a part of his family, like you better get on with the family's business, which is to bring the kingdom to earth, right? On earth as it is in heaven through who he made you to be. And, it's like one of the texts, I don't know if I was scheduling it for later in the week, but I remember reading it, it's like when you look like Jesus, the more you look like Jesus, the more God fills you because you're a better investment for him, I love that imagery. And so, again, just really challenging our listeners to really pause with this and consider that you've been grafted in, like by your very nature, you are called to be a disciple and therefore be a disciple maker.
Yeah. You don't have to grow your hair out and wear a tunic and sandals. You're a vessel. So Jesus is a lot of things, from the bride and morning star to the perfect lamb, but he's also our brother, our big brother. He's the head and he's family. God became a man, a person, meaning a human being, right? So there's a lot to all that. But for the sake of simplicity, becoming a disciple or making disciples means that we help people understand the good news, the gospel of the kingdom, which is about family. It's eternal. So I grew up in a way where I learned that, okay, if you do the right things, you're saved by Jesus, but then you have to do the right things, and then you get heaven one day.
Mm,
But right now it's just kind of get through it. You know,
mm,
don't do wrong things, avoid wrong things, do good deeds, and then one day you'll have heaven. And this is just about getting through it. This world is not our home. That's what I learned growing up, and that's my perception of it. And I get to say what I learned and
yeah.
my perception. Maybe people wouldn't agree who know me or whatever, but that's that's kind of looking in the window of what Christianity truly is. You see a bit of it, or a keyhole view, but it's not about heaven. Heaven, people don't like that either. It's about family. It's about right now. It's about
Mm,
adoption. Exactly. It's about understanding the intimate relationships that we have with God. What are they? They are children, sons and daughters. He calls us that, his children. He calls us friend. That's intimate, right? You and I are friends. That's an intimate relationship. It's loving and kind, and it's real. And then there's the spouse. We are the bride of Christ. Wow. Think about the spiritual attributes that go with being a bride. I don't want to be called a bride, but I'll be his bride, right? Excluding all the gender funny terms. But it means we're protected. It means we're cherished. We're loved. We're
mm,
adored.
yeah.
Can't get away from this. So those are three intimate relationships, right? So today we're looking at the son or daughter, the child, prodigal come home, the father's view of us. The father sees us through the son, and we see him through the son. There's no way around the narrow gate. We don't want to get around it. We want to go right through it because it's beautiful and protected in all those aspects. But ultimately, what is the role of a disciple? If you are a disciple, then your goal would be to put God's will on display, um, meaning bear fruit. We're here to bear fruit. So when we enter into God's family, heaven's included, right? Heaven is one day, often the whenever. And I don't know what the heck it looks like. I know it's going to be fantastic. Hopefully there's some barbecue and some good surf. But whatever that looks like, hey, man, for you, probably some bourbon, man.
Yeah.
Uh,
One of these days.
yeah. I
I
mean,
just had this picture of Kevin. There's like a pig in the sand on the beach roasting, and you're surfing, and you come like scooting off the wave, like
oh, yeah.
running up the beach, just going to like eat some pork.
Yeah.
That's a good
Hey,
picture.
we had a little, scramble birthday dinner the other day, and I had my daughters and my son-in-law. One of them son-in-law to be. I'll just call them my sons-in-laws. But we had pizza and hamburgers, and I had both.
You doubled up.
So my pizza had sausage on it, and it was, man, it was so good. I don't know why I'm telling you
You
all
know,
this, but that was heaven to me, is what I'm
yeah.
saying.
Hey, what's funny to me, man, is I was thinking as we were getting the show started today, just about this idea of humble beginnings is something you and I have talked about. And I'm in the upper room at my home, the room over the garage. We kind of jokingly called it upper
Yeah,
room. This is where you and I first
yeah.
started to meet. And I used to
Mhm.
always think back to when we first started, you and I to connect. Like you'd come over to my house crazy early at like 5 a.m. And like, knowing you now and like just knowing the whole context is like we'd sit up here in this upper room and we'd talk about stuff and I was
Yeah,
all over the place in here or whatever. And
yeah.
I remember
You had a
I
good heart.
remember what'd you say?
So you had a good heart.
Yeah.
You're
But I
listening.
remember I remember I drank at the time I was drinking half calf coffee. And so you weren't having any of it. So you brought your own coffee and then you would bring like a pack of gum and you would chew the whole pack of gum and you were like, I'm chewing as many pieces as I want because I can get gum now.
That's right.
Gosh, it made me
Yeah,
laugh.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's funny. This stuff will make you fart, man. That gum, I learned the hard way. It's bad news.
Gosh,
But yeah. Well, God is slow and deep, and That's, it's funny thinking back because it has been 7 years, and he tends to, at least from my point of view, I can see these 7 year periods, and we're entering into a new one. But helping people understand the depth of what it means to be his intimate child, his spouse, and his friend. You don't have to. There's no place for fear. There's no place for worry. So we help people learn how to overcome obstacles and go back and work on traumas and all that. It's not rocket science. It's pretty basic. But there's a lot to it. You have to have a good bit of wisdom and all that, but it's very simple. And so what does it mean when you're untethered and free and you're that vessel and God's Spirit's working through you? So you go through this sanctification process, and God uses circumstances in a
Mm,
big way to stretch us and grow us. Well, what's the first thing people don't like? Tough circumstances, right?
yeah.
So that's like Martha going, "Why isn't Mary helping me?" Oh, immediately she's complaining about this. Jesus doesn't throw her out back. He didn't take her behind the woodshed.
Hmm.
He just says, "Look, your sister's got the better thing, and it won't depart," meaning it's eternal, it's permanent. So when we learn how to listen to God, it's permanent. Think about that. And here's another thing to look at it. When God gives you true blue, blood bought family, friendships in Him, I notice a lot of the people that I've worked with, and over the years, even in my own life, and I know you've seen it too, is you tend to, when you start growing, you start losing friends. You may lose some family. You probably change in work, and it's because God's peeling you away from the world.
Oh
You're
man, that's
still
so
in
good.
it. You're still in it, but you're not of it anymore. And you start recognizing it, and your appetites go away for those things.
Mm,
Doesn't mean you can't have a beer or have some fun, relax, or, whatever. These are things meant to be enjoyed, but not to be medication and all that. So
yeah.
that's part of the journey. Go ahead. You got a thought?
Well, I just want to reiterate what you said is that when you truly become a disciple of Jesus, it is going to cost you something. This is
Yeah,
something that we talk
that's
about,
right.
right? Every cross has splinters, pick it up anyway. That's your words. And it's um but that's the part that we do not often see in Christian culture, is people counting the
Right.
cost. It's like, oh, why did my friends leave me? Or oh, why is my family
Yeah.
angry at me? Or whatever. And I just had a profound conversation earlier this week with a dear friend. Great, great, great heart, man. Just David Hart. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
he was just lost in the world's culture, and he ran into a buddy who was a associate pastor to church, and man, he got saved, and he knew Jesus for real, and he got plugged into this church, and he was all in, man. I mean, all in to this church's mission, which is a mission of salvation and spreading the gospel of salvation, etc. And
Hmm.
now he's getting to a point where he's grown so much that he's starting to see some inconsistencies within this institution. And he's going, man,
Yeah.
my heart's hurting because these people were so great to me in helping me come awake to my sin and come to Jesus. But now I'm wanting to go deeper, and I'm wanting to go beyond where we are, and I'm hungry for
Yeah.
more. And it's just hard because I'm
Yeah.
losing this connectivity. And I just want
Right.
people to know who are in that same arena, like, you're not alone. That's what I told this fellow on the phone. I said, man, you're
Right.
not alone. I,
Right.
I, I said it's a natural progression for
Hmm.
people who are continuing to grow, that you outgrow these old spiritual habits, if that's where people are stuck. And so I just
Yeah.
want to mention that, to be
Yeah.
encouraged if you find yourself in that season. It just means that God is
Hmm.
calling you deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jesus talks about a tree being pruned. It's, you are like a bush or a tree. you're going to get pruned. And if you don't want to be, then just settle for the things of this world. I have a smart alecky way of saying it because I've been around long enough. I don't need to, I've heard it 1,000 million times, and you got to go through it. There's no way around it. So go ahead and embrace the obstacles and let God prune you, because it will lighten you up and you're ready for the journey. And for me, it costs a lot. Enough so that there's no going back, and don't want to. But it's like losing 100 pounds of fat. I mean, I don't know what that's like, but I can only imagine. You don't put that back on. Once you don't have it, you go, whoa, this is way better.
Yeah.
So there are people in your life who do not, they don't foster this. They're not good for you, and God removes them. And you can be friendly, but you don't want to hang out and do life with them. So that happens. It's just part of it.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. It's a lot of things that do not contribute to what he wants to do through you. Putting his will on display means that he wants to express himself through that vessel called you. That's the vacancy in history part. So when you are willing to do that, and you let him remove those things, you'll start to pick up on what he's saying. And it takes conviction and courage, right? All of this we teach people, but you can't teach it by throwing a little booklet at them.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes communication. It takes conversation. It can be a thankless job. It's not just mentoring, that's part of it. But we're getting ready to start some things to help do this in a group setting, and which we'll talk about. But the sanctification process, look up what that means. Sanctification. You're being sanctified. It's like being cleansed. It's being purged. God does that for us. He does it for us, not to us. And it frees us so we can become vessels or disciples, carriers of his will and his, obviously his spirit. So the journey starts, and I see it every time. Things start happening. You go, oh no, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Every time in some way or another. Yeah, okay. So if I hadn't have been through a lot in my own life, then I wouldn't be able to walk with people and stand with them and know what, just hang in there. Hang in there. Small beginnings. Hang in there. People give up too easy, especially this generation. So, but the journey looks like you have to learn to listen. That means you have to learn to rest. And I don't mean rest as in, a vacation. I mean, you have to learn to be quiet and listen and believe. And you follow. You listen, you follow, you keep listening, you learn, you gain conviction, you start to trust that conviction, you take a step, and pretty soon you're fearless about it because you see God come through over and over and over and over again. And that's my perspective.
Yeah.
So what happens, that's the same for everybody in different degrees, but what he does through you is different. The output, the fruit bearing.
Yeah.
That's the uniqueness.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Well, and that's the one body, many parts dynamic that we have to live out, which is the genius of God, is, he made you for such a time as this. Yeah. The question is are you co-laboring with him to that end? Or are you an orange tree trying to produce bananas by your own effort? You gotta, that's talking about the vocation thing. A lot of people we walk with, end up changing careers and so forth. And it's hard. It's really hard because we don't realize how much of our identity is wrapped up in the work that we do and how much we stake our, claim or hang our hat on the fact that, oh, I'm a provider, or, oh, I'm a great chef, or I'm a great, whatever, attorney, or I'm a great salesman. And then the Lord goes, yeah, but I didn't call you to be that, I made you for something else. And you go, ooh, well, that hurts. And then all of a sudden everybody around you goes, well, you're a great salesman. What are you doing? You know what I mean? You're like, actually, no, that's who you say I am. But my Father who made me says I'm something different. And
Right.
that journey, like you said, everybody has to go through it. And
Yeah.
people often get to that spot where they're unwilling to ask themselves the question, is this what God made me for? And
Right.
if the answer is no, then am I willing to go through the pruning process to step away? You know,
Hmm.
and that in and of itself is a journey. We're not telling anybody to jump ship and all. There's a process by which this happens, but there
Right.
is no other way, period.
That's right. Yeah. It's the only way God can remove the appetites of the world and keep you from being double-minded. You learn to live by being led by the Spirit, exactly what it says in Romans 8.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to read that passage just to kind of bring it home. So let's see if I'm looking at it here. Let me find it. Okay, yeah. For all who are led by the Spirit, this is Romans 8:14 and 15-ish. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. For you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father.
Mm.
And it goes on. I mean, this is just maybe my favorite passage in the New Testament. I love this so much. It's why we're here, to
Yeah.
become like that. That's what it means to be like Jesus or a disciple of Jesus. But we have to be a disciple through Jesus. We pray through Jesus. It doesn't stop with him. It always goes through him. So it
Mm.
doesn't end. We're not done with him. It's just there's more. There's more. He's pointing to the Father. He wants us to have that relationship. So the difference is, going back to saved servant, is you recognize Jesus, the perfect Lamb of God, saved you. He died, rose again, and saved you. And if you believe that, then you're his. Truly believe it in your heart of
Mm.
hearts. But so many Christians stop right there,
Mm.
and that's it until heaven one day. And
It,
yeah, go ahead.
I have two thoughts. One is I was going to ask you a question, and I think you just hit on it. I want to give you the opportunity to
Yeah,
clarify this. I was going to
sure.
ask you earlier. So, Kevin, where did we go wrong? Right. And that's not a condemnation or an accusation, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like with the best intentions, we miss the mark,
Yeah.
of this idea of discipleship. And, it sounds like what you're saying is we went wrong thinking that salvation was the goal rather than the starting point. Would that be a fair phrase?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what level you're looking at it, but yeah, that's I would agree with that. And and I mean, we're not trying to have all the answers, and I think that there's a lot of just a pure heart in saying these things. So we're coming from eye level and to encourage,
Yeah.
but that caveat thrown in there. I think the things that God teaches us, tells us to do, are right there in Scripture. And the first thing we do is we have this insatiable fleshly desire to be God.
Mm.
And that started in the garden when Adam made a choice, Eve made a choice. All right, so now it's a long story, but um, we walk by sight. God says not to do that. It doesn't mean put your hands over your eyes and bang into the walls. That's ridiculous. God gave us eyeballs. We're supposed to see. He gave us five senses. We hear, we taste, we feel. What it means is, in a physical place, we use physical things to navigate, but we have to be led by the Spirit of God within us outward. In order to guard our heart from those things, we have to stand on the Word. We have to trust the Word over what we see.
Mm.
And that's what I call, you have to walk by faith from the outside in so that you can be led by the Spirit from the inside out. And when those two things are working together, now you're cooking with gas. It's not an easy thing because it takes a lot of practice. It's simple, but it's hard to overcome the world. So I think when we look back, what the world's done is it has made Christianity a humanistic academic endeavor to whatever
Mm.
degree. So it doesn't matter if you're going to big church over here and it's all emotional and you're rah-rah and that's cool, or if you're, got some theology degree from Harvard. It's all the same crap. And I'm saying that, you don't have to say it, not, whoever.
Yeah.
I'm not saying your worship experience is crap to anybody.
Yeah.
I'm saying the institution is falling apart. So what isn't falling apart is getting together with people, with like-minded believers, and encouraging them, spurring them on, and teaching fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, and brothers and sisters. Worshiping God together, that's whole and healthy.
Yeah.
That has become a marketing plan. In other words, churches they get in this thing, right? They don't trust God. Let's use a big church that used to be a small church, all right, to answer that question. What happens is, if you don't, gosh, there's so much to this, but the simplest thing, a church wants to grow. Instead of just pouring out truth, its goal becomes growth. Why? So you can add more things, so you can add more staff, so you can build bigger. So it's a self-perpetuating cycle. And then you hire somebody, program it. It turns into a marketing process. So then you get a coffee bar, then you get a projector, then you get and I've seen this, I've seen it so many times. It is all the same. So it becomes this marketing endeavor, and it becomes a huge bloated thing instead of just two or more gathered. And so that's the best way I can say it. It does not mean the church you go to is bad. There's a lot of good ones. It just means that the institution, the trajectory it's on, is leading people down I'm going to worship mankind road. I just saw the other day, they're doing a drag show at a church down in Naples. And yeah, you look at our schools. And so this is the way of mankind.
Mm.
All right. It has infiltrated what we might call congregational church. It doesn't mean they're all bad. Go to one that's filled with the Spirit and has integrity. And they're out there, but they're generally not bigger. You don't get lost in a crowd. They have intimacy. There's some markers there.
Yeah.
So we have followed this idea that man is God. And we're seeing the chickens have come home to roost. You see it. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's where
Yeah.
we went wrong.
Well, and I appreciate sharing that. I think that's fantastic to really sit with. And, certainly we have context and revelation that has come upon us, from every angle. There's many people, many institutions, many churches that are being revealed for having sexual scandals, misconduct, improprieties, financial, whatever, And so when you have these things like what's going on with, Hillsong or Mars Hill or what just came out on the SBC, you know what I mean? It's not an opportunity to go, "Oh, I told you so." It's a heart posture to go, "Oh my God," like we're grieving the reality that, what I mean, this has happened. But at the same time, we know that God is bringing about his goodness through it. So we have to go, man, this is tough, but it just goes to show you that God is drawing men unto himself for those who would listen, who would let go of this humanistic, institutional thought. And so, it's as hard as it might be to go through this or see people, struggle with some of the abuse and so forth. That's awful. But what it is it's revealing the true nature of Christ, in his people and calling them back to himself.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And, all you really need is a willing heart. God will work through it. It may take a lifetime. It may take a few years or whatever. It pretty much doesn't take a week.
Yeah,
You have a lot of,
that could be the
you know,
problem for some people. Hey,
yeah,
God, can we get this
yeah,
sanctification process over by the end of summer?
yeah. Well, see, when you have traumas and strongholds and negative behavior patterns, you want, all you're doing is well, generally speaking, you want people to know your value. So when you overtalk people, or when you one up people, or when you get that pitter pat, like, what can I get back out of somebody? One of the reasons that people actually sit down and listen to me for a long period of time is because they know my heart truly is about helping them. And I mean it with everything in me. It gets tiring at times because sometimes, there needs to be reciprocation. But that's okay. My goal is to help. So that's rare, though. Most people at some point, I'm not saying I am, we all have a place in this thing. I'm just saying I've learned this. But that's where the fruits of the Spirit are massive, and they really matter. All right. So you have to let God work through that in you. But once you get a hold of it, then you can be a vessel in a way that you don't. Your agenda is Him. It doesn't mean you let people run all over you. That's hard, but it does mean your goal is to let God work through you.
Mm,
And so that's where we've gone wrong. Is people are impatient. They want everything right now, or they think they know when they don't,
mm,
and they haven't spent time with God. People, all that stuff we just talked about, that's stuff that, I venture to say that, gosh, I hate to say it this way, but this is stuff that it's not new to me. It's just now being seen by the world.
yeah.
That, that, but I have the blessing. I had to go through what I did. And it's not unique in some ways. People go through terrible things, but uh, the blessing of it is God showed me some of this stuff, a lot of this stuff, years and years before it happened, and here
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that? Go around going, look what I knew, and I told you. No, you just be good. You give. You work from that place, and gradually people see, oh my gosh, God's really working through these guys or this thing, and it's pure. It stays pure. And there's so much out there that is not pure. And I'm not saying I am, because, dude, I have some crazy thoughts sometimes, and I get pissed off. But the Spirit of God can work through me and work through you, and we mean it. We're not here to, grow some massive, big old church thing or some. Only reason we even created a business was so that we can help reach more people. That's the point of it. It's not to become Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, something that's really, really, as you talked about this idea of um, saved servant to sanctified son, it
Yeah.
triggered this thought about someone that we both love that was kind of a forerunner in this thought, and that's C.S. Lewis, and he wrote
Yeah.
about this concept in Mere Christianity called the new man.
Hmm.
And I wanted to just read this because it's a good picture, I think, for people to grab hold of.
Yeah.
Um, he said, in the last chapter, I compared Christ's work of making new men to the process of turning a horse into a winged creature. I use that extreme example in order to emphasize the point that it is not about improvement, but about transformation.
Yeah.
And then he says, it's not a change from brainy men to
That's
brainier
right.
men. It's
Right.
a change that goes off in a totally different direction, a change from being creatures of God to being sons of God.
Yeah.
And the first instance appeared in Palestine 2,000 years ago.
Yep.
And so just beautiful, right? You know what I mean? This
Right.
trajectory that we are called to, that, becoming a Christian is not about improving your life. It's about becoming an entirely new creature.
That's
And
right.
the old has to pass away. And so if you have this moment where you've encountered Jesus or you believe in Jesus, but the old is still there, like, let the process of transformation happen. that is often the process of pruning, the process of difficulties through circumstances, all the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah, you learn to trust God by learning to trust him.
I love
Pretty
it.
simple. You don't get to trust him by just hanging out and hoping. You have to encounter the tension, and you have to step in and believe. Only believe. Belief is the big thing. And that's what Jesus said. Only believe. But yeah, C.S. Lewis had a unique gift, and he definitely, if you want to say hero, a hero of mine in particular, because he wasn't so churchy. He was more about getting to the deep truth of things, and he would corner you. His writing corners you. You can't escape, and that's what the world needs. It needs challenge. It doesn't need more, you know. Gosh, you name it. Pick any avatar
Yeah,
today.
cupcakes. Let's just call it cupcakes.
Yeah, it's so messed up. So all that said, we want to just like Jesus said. I want to read the amplified version real quick of this. Let me put my glasses back on. This is Matthew 28. I think it's 19. It says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations," and in brackets it says, "Help the people to learn of me, believe in me, and obey my words, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." So that sums it up. That's what we're here for. That
Yeah.
includes, preaching, teaching, all of it. But it's holistic. It's deep. It's relational. It's intimate. It's not, think about this way. Jesus, when he was walking the planet, right? He's not here now physically. He lives in us through the Spirit. And he has a presence, but he's not physically in front of us. We have the Word. So implanted in the outside written word. But think about back then, there wasn't a box with a steeple on it. He wasn't trying to get people in a box with a steeple on it or a cross on top. And so if you just think about that, it's just like when Paul is speaking from the Spirit inspired words that were transcribed and written down. There wasn't a Bible. I mean, he had the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, Torah, all of that, but he didn't have. There was no New Testament. So we've got to go organic for a second. We got to think about Jesus walking around teaching, and people perpetuating that, going and teaching other people. And it's simple. So it's about people, right?
I love what you're saying. Like, they weren't handing out Bibles. Not that there's anything wrong with handing out Bibles, but that's a great thought, is that, they weren't just handing out Bibles. They were actually teaching people a process, a methodology, a way of thinking, a way of life. They were teaching this, and that's what was spread out, not just passing out a book.
That's right. So we got to get rid of all this kind of thinking where, well, I got to go down the street to a building with a cross on top, which Jesus isn't on the cross, by the way, anyway.
Yeah.
That was a moment, terrible moment, but a great moment, the freedom. And there was no Bibles back then. So we have to learn that the word, the written word that God prepared and brought about today is something we can stand on. And so we need to engage it, but it's not a playbook for living well. It's a journey into God's personality, and it helps us begin to open up our own spirit and for him to live there. Yeah, we are new creations. The devil cannot uncreate a new creation. So quit giving him power and homage. Quit worrying about him. Don't be afraid of the things you see, right? Walk by faith, not by sight. Don't have fear. And it just take baby steps, and you'll start to see if he wants you to start a grill and make fantastic hamburgers, then go do it.
Yeah.
And that will preach,
Yes.
because you'll be like Jesus to the people coming in, and you don't have to shy away from it. But there's no fear. It's the good news. The good news. You got to be the good news before people will listen to the good news about him. You have to be it. You have to be his hands and feet. That might be working in a wood shop. It might be, it can be anything. So we got to get rid of all this. I got to be at the pulpit, and I got to, 3 songs and a prayer and check a box and get you dunked and get you over at my Amway house.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All
Amway's
good.
okay.
All good, man.
But
Anyway. So we got a few minutes here to wrap up, today's show. I know we want to talk a little bit before we close out, just about kind of a new endeavor for us. And so, Kevin, I'll let you kind of pave the way with that.
Well, one of the things, we've got so many things we are doing. We want to do them well, and it takes time. And so we've got, we try to focus in the areas where God gives us the resource. You want to build something that is sustainable. So we got a lot of neat things going on. But today we wanted to talk about the idea of becoming a disciple maker, not just a disciple, but your value is in making disciples. And so what that ultimately looks like for us is we want to have this mid ground. We've had Matt kind of out there on the front lines and doing events and doing faith in business and getting in the crowd. And that's what you, Matt, are brilliant at. It's part of your gift set. It's not your whole gift set, but it is, part of you. And mine is not the opposite, but it's like the other wheel on the bike, and they work well together. But we're missing a lot of people, and so it's not a bad thing. We're just, our next phase, if you will, of growth is to begin to have the intimacy of a group setting, without it being a Bible study or this stuff that people are kind of tired of. So we're doing, we're going to set up kind of, for lack of a better term right now, a group mentality where we're calling it Fearless Disciple Makers. I guess we'll still talk through that.
Yeah.
But we want to help you become a disciple maker. And we want to do it in group settings where core principles are taught, but we're using the word. And there's a lot of organic teaching in that. And so there's a lot of freedom in it. But there's a foundational journey of going from a saved servant to a sanctified son or daughter. So that once it's not about just becoming a disciple. It's about the responsibility that you carry of becoming a disciple maker. And that's what's unique about us and what we do. And now we're just going to, instead of it being out there in faith and business or at an event or just in mentoring, we're going to create a group environment and then also have a kind of a Q&A monthly type thing. We'll talk more about it soon, but
yeah,
that's our next kind of educational front.
Well, I think one of the things that we have, not necessarily lacked, but it's just we haven't had the capacity for it, is this idea of some type of corporate gathering, meaning multiple people getting together. We've had a faith in business once a month, which is kind of a doorway, and we've had, some fearless events or whatnot. But this is, like you said, I love the word intimacy. It's drawing people into an intimate environment, an intimate relationship where the trajectory is to not only make disciples, but make disciple makers, and then begin to send those folks out. So this isn't the small group where we just do small group in life together for the next 6 years. It has not necessarily a beginning and end always, but it has a pathway by which people are trained up, educated, and then sent off. And so I'm excited, man. I'm super excited about it. And I really feel very, very strongly that this is so needed and people are so hungry for this in this season.
Yeah. So we're getting close, and a lot of things are going on under the surface. We don't talk about it a lot. I spend a lot of my time working on those things, and so do you. But these things are going to connect pretty soon, and they're going to start to make more sense. And eventually, as God opens the doors for us, more and more people will be involved. And but just if you know our hearts enough, just know that we're here to help. And so we're getting ready to launch another way to do that in a group setting.
Yes.
And we'll probably, maybe by next week, we'll be able to kind of share the dynamic and a launch date and all that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, man, I appreciate you sharing today, Kev. And for anybody who's taking the time to listen and join us today, I want to throw this up on the screen for our video folks, and I'll certainly narrate over it for our podcast listeners. But I've got a picture on the screen here of Fearless Coffee. And we just want to remind folks that, like, this coffee is a wonderful way to just get plugged in. People say, how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? Listen, grab a coffee subscription. Use it, drink it in your own household, or use it as a way to begin having conversations. We have a good friend of mine who has been a supporter of ours for years. Aaron Jenkins lives down in Florida, and he grabbed a coffee subscription last week, and he posted it on social media. And he goes, "Man, I'm kicking myself for not doing this earlier, but this is great coffee, and I love the mug that came with it. And man, just really love what you guys are doing." And people are going, "Oh man, how can I get some? Oh man, and he's like, "Dude, this is awesome." And so we mentioned last week that somebody's wearing Fearless t-shirts up in New York City. We've got, all of our friends out in Nashville that are doing this, you know what I mean? We've even got some friends, I think, in Montana, out West that are, so it's just awesome to see how God is continuing to utilize this. So wherever you are, wherever you're listening from, grab some Fearless coffee. It's a great way to get started, get plugged in. Just wanted to make sure you knew that that's one of the ways that we continue to, help fuel this process.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. And I just want to say thank you for anyone who engages and who wants to reciprocate and not just be helped, but become a help and help us do what we need to do in whatever way you're led. We appreciate that, and especially those who give back. So Thank you.
Absolutely, friends. Well, Kev, thanks so much for pouring out today. I just, we do these shows. We've been doing them now for, like you said, it's the better part of 6 years off and on. Today had just there was a heart to it that was very transparent and very real, but it was challenging, packed with truth. So I don't know, man, I don't like to pick favorite shows, but today really hit well for me. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, thank you too, man. We stand together. So God bless you, and we'll be back at it.
That sounds good. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.